Hey, Matt, did you know when this first started, he was a
I know.
He's got you on air already. We're missing somebody.
Mike's on.
Got you on air.
You could start.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Bolingbrook Plan Commission meeting, July 15th, 2020. May I have a roll call, please?
Roll call. Okay. Commissioner Schenk?
I can't hear her.
Yes, here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Commissioner Tucker?
Yeah.
Commissioner Wright?
Here.
Shirley?
Here.
Commissioner Flores? Here.
First item on the agenda. We don't have any minutes to approve, correct? Would be a special use permit for a planned development, Performance Motorsports, located at 490 Wood Creek Drive, Unit C. The applicant is Louis Fair, project number 410.20. May I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Wright, second Commissioner Schenk. Roll call, vote please.
Commissioner Tucker?
Yeah.
Commissioner Schenk?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Shirley?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores? Yes.
Staff presenter today is Mr. Eastman. You have the floor.
Thank you. The applicant is here before you tonight to request approval of a special use permit for a planned development in order to allow for a full-service auto detail shop at 490 Wood Creek Drive, Suite C. The property is zoned I-1 Limited Industrial and is surrounded by all other properties zoned I-1 Limited Industrial. The site itself is roughly 1.14 acres and has an approximate 16,335 square foot office warehouse building. Access to the property is from 2 points, one being off of Remington Boulevard to the southeast and one off of Wood Creek Drive to the northwest. The facility has adequate parking for the proposed use. Per the zoning ordinance, auto service, rental, sales, and supplies are not permitted within the I-1 district. As such, the applicant is requesting a special use permit to allow a full-service auto detail shop, commonly known as Aesthetic Detail Studio at 490 Wood Creek, Suite C. Per the applicant, the hours of operation would be 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., 7 days a week. This is kind of like an appointment type thing where you would go onto his website and sign in and pick out the time that worked for you, so he can kind of be very accommodating in that area. All vehicles would then be brought inside to be detailed and no work would be conducted within the parking lot. So this isn't like working on the cars per se. This is like your ceramic coatings, your professional interior, exterior details on the cars, the acid washes, things like that. So the space is already accommodating with a floor basin that can accommodate fuel and oil and separator. So the staff doesn't have any objective to this type of use, and it'll actually be next to a use that does online car sales. And who knows, maybe they'll work together to detail some of those cars that he's going to sell. So staff is recommending approval of a special use permit for a planned development to allow Aesthetic Detail Studio at 490 Wood Creek, Suite C, subject to all vehicles being serviced are stored inside the building. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Eastman. Any questions from the commissioners? Any correspondence from the audience? Seeing none, may I have a motion to close this hearing?
Second.
Motion.
Motion Flores,
Flores.
second Schenk. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker?
Yeah.
Commissioner Schenk?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores? Yes. Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Shirley?
Yes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda. Excuse me. An annexation and rezoning from ER to I-1 and special use permit for planned development, TEF Weber Prop. Applicant is Benjamin Schuster, project number 412.20. May I have a motion to open this public hearing, please?
Motion.
Second.
Motion Flores, second Schenk. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker?
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Shirley?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores? Yes.
With that being said, presenter Mr. Matt Eastman.
I'll be right there. I'm just trying to get it to refresh.
Did you break it?
Technology. Well, this will make the meeting a lot more difficult. Did you see a mouse up there by chance? There we go. Hold on.
Okay.
Never done.
Still sweat.
You guys have the exhibits in front of you. This particular one,
Yes, we
won't
do.
have an aerial, so unfortunately, he did pass out those additional aerials, so you have it at.
Go ahead and proceed.
The applicant is here before you tonight to request approval of a rezoning from ER Estate Residence to I-1 Limited Industrial and a special use permit for a planned development. This is in order to rezone two existing lots of record at the southwest corner of Southwest Frontage Road and Weber Road. The applicant is seeking approval of a rezoning for the above referenced property from ER to I-1, which is part of a petition to annex. Whenever a property is annexed into the village, it is initially classified as ER Estate Residence, necessitating a rezoning to a more appropriate zone. In this instance, the appropriate classification is I-1 Limited Industrial, since most of the surrounding properties are such zoned. The applicant is also seeking a special use in order to allow a planned development which would allow them to have all the permitted uses within the B1 local retail district and B2 community retail district permitted as part of that special use. Also, any of the special use listed within the B1 and B2 would be available to them. Obviously, they would have to go through the proper protocol and come back to get that special use approved through the Plan Commission and Village Board, but they wanted to note that. Lastly would be a special use permit to use a portion or all of the subject property for a gas station, including a diesel service with convenience store, subject to a site plan review. Any other zoning relief as may be necessary to fully grant the application, subject to the approval of the annexation and annexation agreement. That being said, they do not have a plan before you tonight. They are simply trying to rezone the property with this as part of an annexation agreement in order to make this property marketable. So staff is here to recommend approval of a rezoning from ER to I-1 for the subject property at the southwest corner of Southwest Frontage Road and Weber Road, commonly known as TEF Weber, subject to the approval of the annexation and annexation agreement. And staff further recommends approval of a special use for a planned development to allow all B1 local retail district and B2 community retail district permitted uses within the I-1 limited industrial district, including a gas station and convenience store, subject to the approval of the annexation and annexation agreement. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Eastman. Do you have any questions from the commissioners? Any correspondence from the audience? Seeing none, may I have a motion to close this public hearing?
Motion.
Second.
Commissioner Flores, second Commissioner Shank. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker?
Yeah.
Commissioner Shank?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Chair Ali?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores? Yes.
At this time, I'd like to call on a motion to accept the findings of fact. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores, yes.
I'd like to call for a motion for the annexation and rezoning from ER to I-1 and special use permit for a planned development, project number 412.20. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion.
Commissioner Schenk, second Commissioner Wright. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Here.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores, yes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda. We have a special use permit for a planned development with variances, final development plan, and final plat of subdivision, Drew Enterprises. Applicant is Paul Lombardo, project number 407.20. May I have a motion to open this public hearing, please?
So moved.
Second,
Commissioner Schenk, second Commissioner Flores. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Here.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores, yes.
Mr. Eastman, you have the floor.
Thank you. The applicant is here before you to request approval of a special use permit for a planned development with variances, final development plan, and a final plat of subdivision in order to allow for the modification of an existing stormwater management facility, as well as the construction of a parking lot expansion for the purposes of permitting truck and trailer sales and rentals. This is located at the southeast corner of Stevenson Drive and east-south frontage road. So to get your bearings, this is Stevenson coming in here, and then frontage road is here with I-55. The roughly 15.656 acres of land is zoned I-1 Limited Industrial and is located at the southeast corner of Stevenson and frontage road, the majority of which was previously owned by LaGrue Distribution and serves as the corporate crossing stormwater management facility. Access to the property would be provided off of frontage road for the east side of the property, and then this is also connected to the next item in the agenda, which I will get into separately. They are here to first request a final plat of subdivision. The property total size, which would include 297 and 301 east-south frontage road, is 25.422 acres. It's all, again, zoned I-1, and the purpose of this would be to subdivide it and create 5 lots of record. Lot 1 would be approximately 3.5 acres, created for the parking lot expansion of Stevenson Crane. Stevenson Crane is on the west side of Stevenson Drive, but they do own this property, and they are looking to work in conjunction with this applicant to regrade the stormwater management facility in order to make this property usable for them to store vehicles on. But again, that will be the next item. Lot 2 would be approximately 6 acres and created for the purposes of a stormwater management facility, and it would include specific language outlined in the Will County Countrywide Stormwater Management Code. Lot 3 would be approximately 5.99 acres and created for the parking lot expansion of the previously mentioned 297 and 301 east-south frontage road. And then Lot 4 and Lot 5 total roughly 9 acres, almost 10 acres, and would be created for 297 and 301 east-south frontage road. Within your packet, you have the proposed final development plan. This attached plan, he's proposing to modify that stormwater management facility, which is pretty much centrally located within this development. And this would be to construct a parking lot expansion for the benefit of 297 and 301 east-south frontage road, which would include roughly 117 truck stalls for short-term parking in conjunction with the existing truck, trailer sales, and rentals business. If you're familiar with Ryder Truck there at 301 east-south frontage road, and they're doing quite well, so the additional space will be help them utilize more inventory. Part of this plan, which you can see on the color rendering a little better, which I'll go to up in this area. So you can see right in here, they're proposing to construct a 5-foot brick planter wall, and then in front of the wall would be a 6-foot ornamental fence. If you've ever driven down frontage road here, the applicant owns some additional property here, and he wants to have a unified look. So he has this nice wrought iron fence going the length of the frontage road, so that fence line would be picked up by this new development, including the wall and a lot of landscaping to help screen the parking area. In order to develop this property in accordance with the plan you have before you, he is here to request one special use and a number of variances. The first is a special use that I have already mentioned to allow the truck and trailer sales and rentals. The village is willing to support this, subject to the approval of the landscape plan that I discussed, including the wall and ornamental fence. The second one would be to install a non-dust-free surface within the parking lot. So this darker gray area in the middle of the proposed parking lot would be concrete, heavy-duty concrete for the trucks to actually maneuver in. And then the stalls themselves, he's proposing to have CA6, which is by code a non-dust-free surface. Staff is willing to support that as requested. We just request that he does the appropriate measures to keep any material being brought onto frontage road. 3 would be a variance to reduce the required front yard setback. Within the I-1 district, all these properties have to maintain a 35-foot front yard setback. The applicant is requesting to reduce that to roughly 5 feet, which would be in this area. But as you can see, his property backs up to a very large section of land which is owned and controlled by IDOT. So even with the reduced setback, he will be quite a ways off of the road there. So staff was willing to work with him to support a reduced setback in some areas to allow for proper truck circulation. The next would be a variance to reduce the side and rear yard setback. So similar to why we would support the reduction in the front yard setback, he is requesting to produce a 0-foot setback on the west side and roughly 5 feet on the south side. Next would be the variance to install the aforementioned 6-foot tall wrought iron fence. When you're going to install a fence on commercial property, you do have to maintain the setbacks within that property. He's requesting to put this essentially on the front property line to help serve as not only a barrier to the property, but a nice aesthetic feature to the property as well. So in order to kind of go with what we've already supported to the east of this, we are willing to support the variance as well to reduce that setback for the fence to go to 0 feet. Number 6 is a variance to waive the installation of a berm and irrigation system within the front yard. So when industrial properties are developed, if you go down Remington, you're pretty familiar with the berms that you see that front anytime they are back up to, front an actual thoroughfare. In this situation, 1, he cannot really control and touch the IDOT property, and 2, there's quite a bit of drop off here, and they have to climb the property back up. So it is, in a sense, somewhat of a berm, but it doesn't do your typical undulating up and back down berm. So he is requesting a variance to waive that requirement as well as the irrigation system. And staff is willing to support that subject to all of the landscape material that he is willing to install, which is above and beyond what code would require. Number 6 is a variance to relocate and distribute the required plant material within the side and rear yards as well as around the detention area. So typically when you create a pond, there has to be around the high water level a certain number of plantings as well as within the rear and side yards. He's requesting to simply take all that plantings and put it up front to provide as much screening from traffic on I-55 and frontage road as possible. So staff was in support of that as well, due to the fact that this will be kind of it'll be a natural looking stormwater area. So rather than the plantings being kind of hidden in that area, we felt it would be much better up in the manicured front yard. Number 5 would be a variance to remove more than 50% of the trees on site. This is kind of a combination. He'll be mass grading the property if this is approved, and there's a number of trees that are above 6-inch in diameter. We're willing to support that variance subject to all the required trees being replaced. So that'll be part of the approved landscape plan. Number 9 would be a variance to waive the required public improvements within the right-of-way along frontage road. So again, when you develop a property, you're definitely required to then put the necessarily public improvements along the frontage of the road. So you would typically have your parkway area with parkway trees, a sidewalk, and street lights. Well, frontage road doesn't have any of that, so we are willing to work with him on this as well, because there would be a sidewalk to nowhere essentially, and right now there is not street lights on any part of South Frontage Road, nor would we want street lights, 75 feet off of the road. So we're willing to support that variance as well. Number 10 would be a variance to allow all the overhead utility lines to remain above ground. There is utility lines which, again, are running within the IDOT property here. And when you develop property, you're typically required to, at the developer's expense, to bury those lines. But in this particular area, it's an older part of town. All these lines have remained above ground. We supported the variance in the past to the property to the east of this. So this is just remaining consistent and supporting the same variance for this property. Lastly would be a variance to increase the fluctuation of a pond. Chapter 33 of the municipal code requires pond fluctuation not to exceed 6 feet, and the applicant is requesting a variance to increase the fluctuation to 14 feet. It may not be that high, but we wanted to give them a little bit of wiggle room as they finish up the design of this reworking of the stormwater facility. That all being said, I wanted to show a few views. So cross-section A is up more towards the east side of this site. So this is before, he only has about 5 feet to work with. So he will have the wall, the landscaping material, and then the fence. And then this is kind of all the IDOT property that we talked about. And then as you continue moving west, he's able to then construct a bit of a wall where he can have plantings on top of it, as well as the fence and additional plantings in between both sides of that. So it does kind of get a real nice finished look to the site, much more than what you see today if you drive down I-55. So with all that being said, staff is here to recommend approval of a special use permit for a planned development to allow for the construction of Drew Enterprises development at the southeast corner of Stevenson Drive and East South Frontage Road with the aforementioned variances and special use, as well as recommending approval of final plat of subdivision and final development plan, subject to all staff's comments from July 8th being addressed, and the review and approval from the Director of Public Services and Development. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Eidson. Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Shank?
The setback was originally 35 feet. They're requesting a 5. They want to explain to me again what the disadvantage would be to.
So I think is important to keep in mind is that you have almost 80 to 90 feet of IDOT property here. So if you drive down the street, it looks like they're giving you a 100-foot buffer. So if you then take 35 feet into that, he loses the ability to essentially circulate the trucks inside of the lot. So that's why we were willing to support that.
All right.
If you were right next to the thoroughfare, that would be a whole different story.
Right, exactly. If he had abutted frontage road, that would be a different story.
Commissioner Shank?
Entrance and exit is only, from lot 3 is only through lot 4?
Correct. So there'll be a cross-access easement that allows the trucks to obviously enter and exit onto frontage road as part of the plat.
And the stormwater management, how cumbersome will that be? That's to reduce the rainwater runoff, improving the water quality.
Correct.
So they're going to reuse this water for hydrologies and things of that sort.
So what they're actually doing is regrading everything to make the pond deeper, so it would accommodate the additional impervious surface. So they're not changing the quality of the water, they're actually going to improve it by redesigning the pond itself.
And the EPA requires an association for that?
They will have an association.
Yeah, okay.
That's why typically we wouldn't want a pond on its own lot. And actually part of staff's comments was to create an association for the duration of the pond so that we can guarantee its maintenance.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Any correspondence from the audience? Seeing none, may I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Shank, second Commissioner Barrington. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yeah.
Commissioner Shank,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores, yes.
At this time, I'd like to motion to accept the findings of fact.
So moved.
Commissioner Schenk,
Second.
second Commissioner Flores. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Here.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores, yes.
At this point, I'd like to call for a motion to approve special use permit for a planned development with variances, final development plan, and final plat of subdivision for Drew Enterprises, project number 407.20. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Commissioner Wright, second Commissioner Barrington Tucker. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Here.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores, yes.
Thank you. Nicely documented, Mr. Eastman.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, PC 20.07, approval of a special use permit for a planned development with variances, final development plan, final plat of subdivision, and adoptions of finding of fact, project number 407.20. And this is for Stevenson Crane, correct? Project 411.20, I'm sorry. Located at 410 Stevenson Drive. May I have a motion to open this public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Schenk, second Commissioner Flores. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Here.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores, yes.
Mr. Eastman?
Thank you. You'll notice that some of this report kind of is redundant with what I just went over. It really ties in together, but I will go through it with you here. The applicant is here to request approval of a special use permit for a planned development with variances and final development plan in order to allow for the modification of the existing stormwater management facility, as well as the construction of a parking lot expansion for the purposes of permitting the outdoor storage of both trucks and cranes in conjunction with the Stevenson Crane operation at 410 Stevenson Drive. The 3.579 acres of land is zoned I-1 Limited Industrial and is located at the southeast corner of Stevenson Drive and east-south frontage road. Is currently vacant and is part of the Corporate Crossing Stormwater Management Plan, plat of subdivision. Access to the property would be provided off of Stevenson Drive to the west, as you'll see in the plan when we get to that. Per the attached plan, the applicant is proposing to construct a parking lot expansion for the benefit of Stevenson Crane, which would include 24 truck stalls, 29 crane stalls, sorry, 29 crane stalls and 48 automobile stalls within a private, as well as a private fueling station, which would be used and accessed by employees only in conjunction with an existing Stevenson Crane business. All the required landscaping would be installed within the front yard along Stevenson Drive, as well as the corner side yard along east-south frontage road, in order to assist in screening the trucks and cranes from view.
We have a copy now.
Yeah, I know, I was just... Sorry. In order to develop the property in accordance with the I-1 zoning district, as well as the development code per the attached plan you have before you, the applicant is requesting the following. One is a special use to allow truck and crane storage. It's pretty self-explanatory. Their operation involves the storage of cranes and trucks on their property, and they've done very, very good business in town, and they're sort of busting at the seams. So they are looking to have additional area to store both trucks and cranes. This lot would be gated both at the entry point here and the entry point here. This area right here, I'm sorry, is the aforementioned fueling station, which would be only used and accessed by their employees. The first variance would be to reduce the required front yard setback along Stevenson Drive. So that's directly in this area. Currently, there are some stalls that were cut into the right-of-way area to allow for additional parking for them. They are looking to recreate some of this space and relocate some of those stalls, and as part of doing that, we're going to work with them and possibly either put an easement on these stalls or potentially deed over some more right-of-way to the village so that those stalls are not on private property. But in saying that, in this area gets very tight in order to build the truck parking area, so we're requesting to reduce the setback to 10 feet in that area. Number 3 would be a variance to allow dead-end parking. So up in this area right here, typically in all of our developments, we require complete forward motion to avoid the old 3-point turn to get in and out of a dead-end area. With this being only employees only and not open to the public whatsoever, staff is willing to support the variance to allow the dead-end parking in this situation. Also noting that, it's not super deep, so when you get to this point, you should be able to tell if the lot's full or not. So we will support the variance in this instance. A variance, again, for the same reason I mentioned before with the other property, we are looking to waive the berm and irrigation system within the front yard along Frontage Road as well as Stevenson Drive. Both properties on this side don't have the berm and or irrigation system, but they are providing more than adequate landscaping within that area. Number 5 would be a variance to increase the maximum width of a curb cut, including the throat of a driveway. So the 2 curb cuts here, when you're maneuvering, I've never had to driven a crane, but trucks and cranes obviously do not have the same turning radius as your typical automobile. So they're requesting to reduce both the width at the property line as well as the throat of the driveway, which is more in the middle, per the approved final development plan in order to allow for the proper circulation. Staff is willing to support that variance as requested. Number 6 would be a variance to reduce the width of the curbed islands at the end of a parking row. So at the end of each parking row, you're required to have an island that is 9 foot wide, back of curb to back of curb. In this instance, in order to allow for better maneuverability, they're requesting to reduce that to roughly 6 feet in some areas, and I think this one may be down a little bit below that. But we'll work on that to see if we can beef those up a little bit. But it's well noted that the landscaping that's required within those islands is still being provided. Number 7 is a variance to remove more than 50% of the trees on site. So again, due to all the mass grading that's going to be going on in this area, there is a number of trees that are greater than 6 inch in diameter that they will be requesting to remove. And as part of the landscape plan, they will propose to replace those trees. Number 8 is a variance to waive the required public improvements along the right-of-way. Again, along Stevenson as well as Frontage Road, there's simply no use for a walkway in this area. There's no streetlights along frontage, and there is no area to actually include any parkway. Up here you have IDOT property, and here it's just so slim. There is already existing street lighting there along Stevenson, so that will remain as is, but in terms of the typical other parkway improvements, they're requesting to waive that. And number 9, as in the other one, they're requesting a variance to allow the overhead utility lines along Frontage Road to remain. As I stated before, those poles are basically within IDOT right-of-way. They don't have the ability to bring those underground, and none of the surrounding properties have them down, so we're willing to support that as well. Staff recommends approval of a special use permit for a planned development to allow for the construction of Stevenson Cranes parking lot expansion at 410 Stevenson Drive, subject to the aforementioned special use and variances as requested, as well as the approval of a final development plan subject to all comments from the memo dated July 13th being addressed, and the review and approval of the Director of Public Services and Development. And this concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Eastman.
Variance 3. I don't get a warm feeling that the staff can see these trucks. There seems to be a blind spot. Help me with that.
Can you explain the question a little bit, Barrington?
He's talking about the dead-end parking?
Yes, the employee parking where they're supposed to be able to see
So if you're
if something
entering-
is coming.
If you're entering, you're obviously entering here, and at this point, I think you would be able to see if this is full or not. If not, it's employee parking only, so that's why I'm willing to support it. We won't be driving in that parking lot, so it's really an inconvenience to the applicant, as it's not a strip mall.
Are they using the south entrance as well for the same purpose?
No, so down here, this is where they have their fueling facility with, there'll be a canopy here.
And there's not a pass-through access to the parking lot from the fuel facility?
Well, this will be gated, so
It is,
you'll have
okay.
to have a key access, a fob, or however they want to do it.
Variance 4, requesting to waive the required berm irrigation system. You gonna replace it with anything, a fence or anything of that sort?
So they have put in additional landscaping, so again, it's just, if you've driven by the area, it drops off a lot. So they're gonna have to actually ramp up and build up versus being able to have just flat ground where you're taking dirt and making an undulating up and down berm. This actually has to be brought up and then flattened out. So you're only dealing with 10 feet. In order to have a slope that remains at 3-to-1, you need at least 30 feet. So they just don't have the room here. And we appreciate Stevenson as a business, so we're working with them to try to fit more of their product on the property.
Absolutely. Well, with variance 7, 8, and 9, we had already approved that in 407.20.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
it's just, I'm calling out specifically for this lot versus
Yeah.
the other one. So it's just mimicking that.
The project pretty much mirrors
Right.
the prior,
Yeah.
which they've addressed.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Any correspondence from the audience? Seeing none, may I have a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner, was it Barrington? Barrington, second.
Me.
Shank? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yeah.
Commissioner Shank,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores, yes.
At this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the findings of fact.
So moved.
Commissioner Shank,
Second.
second Commissioner Wright. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yeah.
Commissioner Shank,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores, yes.
May I have a motion to approve PC 20.07, approval of a special use permit for a planned development with variances, final development plan, final plat of subdivision, and adoptions of findings of fact.
So moved.
Second.
411.20, my correction, please. Commissioner Shank, second Commissioner Flores. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yeah.
Commissioner Shank,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes,
Commissioner Flores, yes.
we stand approved. And thank you, Stevenson, for their investment in Bolingbrook. Next item on the agenda, we have PC 20.10, approval of special use permit for a planned development with variances, final development plan, and adoptions of findings of fact, project number. Is that correct, Matt?
We're on to,
Rezoning.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Item 5.
Item 5, my apologies. Rezoning from R3 Single Family Residence to I1 Limited Industrial. Applicant is Tom Kenrich from Northern Builders, project number 431.15. May I have a motion to open this public hearing, please?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Wright, second Commissioner Shank. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yeah.
Commissioner Shank,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores, yes.
Mr. Eastman?
Thank you. The applicants are here before you tonight to request approval of a rezoning from R3 Single Family to I1 Limited Industrial in order to rezone a portion of existing lot of record at the southeast corner of Rodeo Drive and Kings Road. So the overall site, not including the 40-acre piece, which would be the separate item tonight, is roughly this large farmland here. 2 buildings have been constructed on this site, one of being Best Buy, which I think most people are the most familiar with. The applicant is seeking approval of a rezoning for a portion of the above referenced property from R3 to I1. This is this gray area here that you see. What was approved back in 2016 essentially the proposed berm, which we'll get into, kind of meandered to the east a little bit. As part of what they're requesting tonight is to straighten that berm out and come straight down, which we'll get into more with both reports. The Village of Trustees approved the original request for rezoning as part of an annexation agreement for the site back in March of 2016. At that time, roughly 214 acres were to be zoned I-1, limited industrial, with 112 acres being zoned R3, single family. You have the exhibits. Per the attached exhibits, the applicant is proposing to rezone approximately 15.22 acres of the overall 326-acre site from R3 to I-1 in order to develop the property as part of Carlo Corporate Center West. We're here just to simply ask for the rezoning now, but I felt it was important to add a couple things in here, which is part of the annexation agreement, which they're requesting to amend, which will be a separate hearing. But I wanted to include this to provide background as to why not only staff but the village is willing to support the request at this point. Per the agreement, a 100-foot berm would be constructed between the transition yard from the industrial to the residential property. It's depicted on this exhibit. So it would climb all the way up 15 feet with a 3-to-1 slope and then flatten out roughly 10 feet, and it would have plantings on both sides. All those would be evergreen type trees that would be year-round green, and that would continue to grow throughout the duration of the berm. The developer would then maintain the berm and all landscaping until an association is formed for the industrial property, at which time the industrial association would then maintain the berm. The entire berm would be constructed prior to any residential development being built on the west side of the proposed line. The berm and transition yard will be designated as an outlot at the time of platting. I think one of the most important things to discuss, when it was originally approved in 2016, all 100 feet of the berm was on residential property. Through the negotiations with the village and the applicant, we've come to a conclusion that 50 and 50 would be, 50 feet would be on the industrial with 50 feet being on the residential. So this does, again, net more area for residential development within that particular part of the agreement. Per the agreement, there would be things added into the annexation agreement that would help ensure the future of what would eventually, this is another picture of the plant, what would eventually be developed on the west side of the berm. So the minimum size of these future lots would be 12,000 square feet. The minimum square footage would be 2,400 square feet for a one-story ranch, and anything two-story and above, the minimum would be 2,900 square feet. Within 60 days after occupancy, each lot shall be landscaped with sod and landscape package equal to 10% of construction costs, including sod. No grass seed would be permitted. There would be a minimum of a 3-car garage required for all the houses developed in this area, and that there would be an annexation fee for each resident shall be prorated at the rate of $10,000 per acre, payable upon platting. And all driveways and walkways would be constructed out of concrete, brick pavers, or block. There would be no asphalt permitted within the subdivision. So I wanted to, before I conclude it and turn it over, I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about where we're at. I know I don't want to block everybody here, but this is the existing Best Buy building, and then this is the building that is at 999 Dalton. This is kind of 1A. They were developing the industrial in phases, so they were going to build 1A, then move north and do 1B, and then anything west of this kind of future drive lane or future road up the middle here would be part of phase 2. So any part of phase 2 would kick off the construction of this berm, or any residential development would ensure that the entire berm being built. So it's kind of, you know, we don't know exactly what Northern's plan is of when phase 2 will happen, but we did want to talk about a couple things tonight. Is that one, the improvement of Rodeo Drive, which I think everyone has gotten to at least see the fruition of that project, which has turned out pretty good. So you're going to get the new streetlight signal at Dalton and Rodeo. We have the Rodeo improvements already built. The roundabout's just about done. And then the water features is what's going to start next. So As they move further into 1B here, they're going to need obviously some dirt to construct those lots, and that's where they will start to excavate those ponds. So those ponds range from 200 feet to almost 220 feet in terms of width. So it provides a real nice natural buffer off of Rodeo Drive. You're not going to have parking lots on top of Rodeo Drive. You're not going to have buildings right on top of Rodeo Drive. So that was something that was approved in 2016 that we're carrying along here with it. So I just wanted to show, obviously, Rodeo Drive being down here, the median being constructed as is, and then this is that future road that I talked about, which would be a right-in, right-out only. There would be absolutely no ability for anyone to head west on Rodeo Drive and actually enter the site. So all truck traffic would have to make the left on Dalton and then circle back into the development. But most of their trucks will actually be coming off of Weber Road, and they'll more than likely make that left on Remington and head over to Dalton that way and enter the site through the back, which I actually can show. Where's the... So kind of what I was talking about there is majority of the traffic's going to be coming off I-55, and they're going to get to Remington and make that left-hand turn and come down to Dalton here and then come up and enter the site. Majority of them are not going to miss this light, go all the way up here and make the left and then come down this way. It just out of their way. But if they did get to this point, or if they happen to be coming straight across, they would be forced to make the left-hand turn here. There'll be plenty of signage here, as well as, again, this median goes all the way down to the roundabout, as you know, so there's absolutely nowhere for them to go. This is also not a truck route, so they would be fined and ticketed if it happened continuously. But that left-hand turn allows them to enter the site here. This middle road is really just for to serve the workers that maybe they don't want to go back out this way. They can come up to the T and just take a right and shoot out that way for lunch or whatever it might be. But I did want to kind of show that to show where the majority of the trucks are going to be coming from, because I know that that's a concern. So just some additional pictures, obviously showing these buildings that would be what we said back in 2016. I'm reiterating now is that they will not be your typical just masonry building with two windows in them that you envision as an industrial building. We are going to ensure that this has a quote unquote a corporate office look to it. So a lot of glass, a lot of different designs to the front of the building to really give it a nice look to it versus, like I said, a truck dock area, for instance. This will have no truck docks at all facing the roadway. So you'll have the nice finished street, the nice water feature, the landscaping, and then the nice frontage of that building. The other thing is, this is kind of what you would see before all the road improvements were done, before the roundabout was put in. And kind of the bottom picture is what you can envision when this project comes to fruition in terms of the residential development. So you'd have your roundabout, this beautiful water feature at the corner, and then the future extension and rebuilding of Kings Road south of Rodeo Drive. So whatever residential developer comes along, just as they've done in the past, they would be required to rebuild Kings Road in that area. So it would be your typical median, one lane on each side, with your nice parkway, and then walkways on both sides, just like the one that was just complete, or almost completed. I think it'll be ready next week, right? So, that's what you could expect in that particular area. So, I mean, I obviously can continue to provide more information, but at this time, I'm going to recommend approval of a rezoning from R3 single family to I1 limited industrial for that portion that I mentioned before, the property located at the southeast corner of Rodeo Drive and Kings Road, subject to the approval of the First Amendment to the annexation and annexation agreement. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Matt. I have some comments and questions before I hand it over to the commissioners here. The water features mentioned, could you, for our knowledge, how far, what the nearest resident on both, like, what do we have, Southgate across?
Yeah, so Southgate is here and Summerfield is here, and this is the Crossroads
Would
Church
say maybe
property.
500-600 feet?
So, yeah, as you can see here, roughly from the front of this building, it's approximately 560 feet from the building to the nearest residential property.
And Kings Road, first, you know, we're very thankful for Northern. They've gone above and beyond to accommodate many of our requests and the arrangements we've had with them. Once this project is done, the residential side, if approved, there's a lot of improvements being done to Kings Road. Could you speculate on that as well, please?
So yeah, the Kings Road essentially would be constructed as the new Kings Road is just north of Passert. Basically all the way down to where Remington, so it'll come straight down, and then as this Remington Road kind of curves right here, it'll tee into Remington there, and then the residential would be responsible to make that final improvement to Remington there. So Remington would be redone all the way from here to where Kings Road connects, and then Kings Road all the way from there to the roundabout.
On part of Northern Builders?
No, it would be as part of the
At the
residential
project there,
development.
okay.
Right.
And,
Northern was responsible for Rodeo, the water feature, and the berm,
absolutely.
and then their portion of Remington on the industrial.
So for the new residential phase, the entrance, are there going to be driveways facing Kings Road, or how's that going to work?
No, so within the actual annexation agreement itself, it limits them to only having curb cuts that would be main entry points into the subdivision. So obviously, we don't know how this will be developed or where the roads will come in at this point, but there will be no residential driveways actually facing or connecting to Kings Road.
And the berm itself, between the two, it will be done when the residential side is, before
Yeah,
it starts, or?
So it could be, there's a couple different triggers, but the way the agreement reads is that if Northern starts to construct any part of Phase 2, they start to have to construct the berm in 1,000-foot increments.
Got
So
it.
as whether they start south and move north, or they move, I would assume they would probably do similar to what they did over here, but then they would build the berm in 1,000-foot increments as they moved north. That being said, for whatever, let's say next year, a residential developer comes after they subdivided this and is very interested in developing this property, and they beat them and say, we want to develop right away, and they want to get this residential going, then Northern is responsible for building the entire berm before that residential can begin
Is that
construction.
pretty standard, like 100-foot wide,
This is the biggest berm in town. This will be,
so it would protect the integrity of the residents?
yes. So that's why we wanted to make sure that the berm would be done, finished, landscaped before this residential development began.
Who's going to be responsible for maintaining that berm?
Northern Builders, until they have an association created within the entire Carlisle Corporate Center, and then the association of Carlisle Corporate Center would take over maintenance. And I guess it would be fair to say too, that's not the only berm that would be developed. There would also be a berm along Kings Road when they develop the residential property. So similar to the berms that you see on 115th or Hassert, some of the more prominent subdivisions, such as the ones to the north here, have that 4-foot to 5-foot undulating berm where you have the landscaping, and pretty soon, within 5 to 10 years, it becomes heavily full, and it creates a nice buffer along King. So you'll have a berm, then you'll have your backyard, houses, and then you'll get into your residential streets and eventually get to the second big berm.
The square footage of these homes, Mr. Eastman, how do they compare with the square footage of homes, per se, that southwest is that Americana?
Yes.
Americana Estates, you got Southgate, you said about 12,000 square feet?
So yeah, Americana Estates is roughly 15,000 square feet.
But I've seen some homes back there are also right around that range, 12, 15,000, correct?
Yeah, so the way we kind of cut this up, this was done before I started here, but 15,000 square feet was the smallest in parts Phase 1 and 2. And then as you went south of Reagan Boulevard, the future lots that have been, they're not, 100% done, obviously, we haven't got that far, but those range from 9 to 10 to 11 to 12,000. And the thinking behind that was, you're going to have a little bit smaller of a product, a little bit lower of a price point than the houses that are directly on the golf course itself. So we wanted to kind of meet in the middle and say 12,000 square feet would be the minimum, which was still 3,000 square feet bigger than any of our regular single-family houses. Code does require 9,250. So at 12,000, there's still quite a bit bigger lots than what would be typical.
And I do understand that the rezoning of that school property is on the next item on the agenda. But just so we're clear here, and the commissioners as well, we're losing about 15 or so.
Let's see if I can.
We're losing about 15 or so acres, and we're gaining about 32 acres in residential, if, correct me
This
if
is
I'm mistaken.
obviously a real rough drawing, but say we lose 15 residential acres here. This is the large 40 peaker, 40. We're picking up 32 of the 40 as residential R3 here.
So we're going basically from like 112 to what, about 129 acres?
129,
in
128.
residential.
Right.
And I assume rezoning and that deal goes through with the school, Plainfield School District, is going to have a price tag that's going to alleviate some debt off the school books, correct?
Yeah, correct. I'm not at liberty. I don't know what the price point is. That's not something that I'm aware of, but I do know that Plainfield School District, when they purchased that 40-acre site, paid commercial prices for it. It wasn't something that they got cheap.
With my experience, that's a pretty decent price tag. Who would benefit? Is the residents, they're all Plainfield District, correct?
Correct. This is all 202.
So they would benefit from that as well.
Correct.
Okay. No further questions. Commissioners?
I think you said it all, Chairman.
I think you did.
No. Any correspondence from the audience? Let's take
you guys
one at a
could
time,
just come up
please.
One at a time and just sign in, and then they'll swear you in. Yeah.
Good night, how are you? Please state your name.
Yeah, my name's Jason Fox. I live
Please
on...
raise your right hand.
Oh, sorry.
No worries at all. Do you swear to tell the truth at this public hearing?
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So my name's Jason Fox. I moved into Bolingbrook about 5 years ago, and we bought the property in Southgate, right on Arlington Street, which is right about where that line is. Our backyard faces Rodeo, so when we moved in, we had big old farmland across the street from us. Now, granted, we know progress happens, and suspected that the land would be developed at some point, and I'm all for that. When I attended the initial hearing on this and the plan that was presented, where the berm started essentially where Crossroad Church is in the middle and meandered its way east, I thought was a considerate plan, taking into account the residents of Southgate and Summerfield. By removing that, and now we'll have that corporate building like literally right across the street from us. You know, as far as the real estate and the property goes, you know, I'm not sure on this bottom left quadrant here why that can't happen either way, but removing that triangle is going to directly affect the residents along Rodeo there. In the bottom right quadrant of this display, where the two buildings have been built, it's probably a good 1.25 miles to 1.5 miles away from where the residents are along Rodeo, and we're constantly hearing trucks backing in, the backup noises at all hours of the night. And so while I appreciate the front facade facing Rodeo won't look like a truck stop, it's not the look necessarily as it is the noise. The trucks coming and going. Super appreciative that Rodeo got expanded, and that's all well and good, but it would have to, considering all the corporate buildings that you're putting there, the traffic's going to go up pretty significantly as well. So I'm opposed to the change. I thought the initial plan was fair and equitable and took into consideration the residents that are already here, not to mention property value as well. I'm glad that, they're gonna still have a portion of residences going up. The concern is what happens a year from now when they go and try to rezone it to have it all commercial. So I'd prefer for the plan to stay as is.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time. Any other correspondence from the audience? Please come on up if you have anything to add to what Mr. Fox just said.
I don't, but I wanted to voice my support for what he has said.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth at this public hearing?
I do.
Please state your name.
Tyler Spriggs. So I also live on Arlington Street, just across the street from Chase. We moved in 2016, and during the process, we weren't able to attend the hearing. But we did hear some of the results from that, and it approved the initial plan. But I echo some of the same concerns that Jason has on this, that we still hear the noise even across the street, across Arlington, occasionally. So I really don't want to see that expanded any further. That's all I have. I think he did a good job of laying out my concerns as well.
Very good. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Any other correspondence from the audience? You swear to tell the truth at the public hearing?
Absolutely.
Please state your name.
James Ward.
James.
I live on the same street these gentlemen do, on Arlington. Just moved into the house a little bit over a year ago. It's my third home in Bolingbrook, so I've been a resident on and off since '92. When I moved to Arlington, I moved from California. It's the only year that I wasn't here. And the reason why we purchased the home, it backs up to Rodeo, was that it was zoned as residential. If I knew then that it was going to change that, I honestly would not have even looked at the home. Because we know that as the buildings go up and they come closer, even with the glass fronts and all that great stuff that comes with, I guess it's called limited industrial, is what you're zoning it as. Is warehousing and things like that follows it. And that has a negative impact on our property value as well. So it's not just the look, the sound. There's a financial impact that'll hit us homeowners in the future at some point. I'll be honest, I'm 10 years from retirement. I'm not going to retire in Bolingbrook. That's going to have an impact on where our finances go as a family. And I'm sure it will these gentlemen as well, and anybody else that backs up to that location. I'm in the warehousing industry. I've worked for warehousing for a company for 35 years, so I know how that all works. I know the noise, I know the sound. You can be across the field and still hear the truck noise, the brakes, the beeping of the beepers when they're backing up, the truck spotters back up. And then on top of that, for warehousing, if they were any type of refrigeration in there for whether it's dairy or frozen product, you're going to have those units that are running there, whether it's the equipment for the building or for the trailers that are parked there. That sound will emanate out and will travel. So I'm certainly opposed to the change and would like to see it stay residential as it currently is zoned. Okay?
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Any other correspondence from the audience today? You swear to tell the truth at this public hearing, sir?
I do.
Please state your name.
Sonny Pittman? I'm sorry, Sonny Pittman?
Sonny?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I'm a resident of Summerfield, and my backyard is rodeo as well. I was opposed because of the noise. I stay right in the cul-de-sac, block from Dalton and Rodeo, and I hear the noise all night. I hear the forklifts, I hear the trucks, and not to mention that, there's not supposed to be truck traffic past Dalton, but, I mean, I have a neighbor who kept count, and on the 7th of July, there was 5 dump trucks, 7 cement trucks, 7 semi-trailers, a flatbed, and 6 box trucks, and that's just between the hours of 9 and 5 p.m. On the 9th of July, between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m., 2 dump trucks, 3 cement trucks, 5 semi-trucks, a flatbed, and another box truck, and it goes on and on. Trucks are continuously riding down past Dalton, and the noise, even at night, I can hear the beepers, as the gentleman said, from the forklifts and from the trucks, and it wakes me up at night, so I'm opposed to the expansion.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Noted. Any other correspondence? Sir,
Yeah, well,
gentleman behind you.
Tom, will a lot of that be in relation to the construction of Rodeo?
I mean, currently, between, the roundabout and Rodeo and Kings, there is a lot of construction equipment in
Okay.
that area, absolutely.
It's a developing area. Yes, sir, please, come on
Well,
up.
it's not the warehousing area that's creating all the noise. It's
Cement trucks are obviously...
Matt, I'll give you an opportunity to address all these. I'm taking notes here.
I can say that there's been tractor trailers that are going through there.
So I'd have to have you come back up and address, please.
My name
You swear to tell the truth at this public hearing, sir?
I do.
Your name?
Name is Steve Zirkus.
Hi, Steve.
I live at 1107 Jefferson Drive, and that's in the Americana Estates, which puts me right about here. My question, it's really more what is coming down the pipe. In terms of lot sizes in the residential area, which would be all of this, roughly what kinds of lots are we talking about?
I think we
Any
addressed that
idea?
earlier, Matt.
Sir?
We did address that earlier, roughly about 12,000.
Okay.
Pretty similar to what you guys have there, 12, 15,000.
15.
Yeah, including concrete driveways, no asphalt allowed. You won't see their driveways facing Kings Road or Americana Estates.
Good. Hopefully you'll also side the houses with other than vinyl.
I'm sure Matt our planner can address that.
Matt?
Did you have more questions? I didn't want to...
Oh, go ahead. That's,
I have to come up with the podium.
come on up.
So, as part of this development, we're talking about rezoning. As part of rezoning, you don't approve covenants and restrictions as part of this. So, no, I don't have any guarantee of what the construction materials will be in the future. Alls I can say is that we do review that as part of the development process, and we will push to have the best development next to Americana Estates as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, we're conscientious of that, and trust me, we also want the best for our community, which is aesthetically good and not affect you at all.
Because we have a set of covenants.
on the microphone, please. Microphone?
If you can speak in the mic, please.
Good point. As you know, we have a set of covenants that you all have approved, and it adds a fair amount of cost to a home. In our case, we looked at lots in Plainfield and at Americana Estates, and the difference in construction, not value of the lot or anything else, between the two towns was $42,000. And that was to get all of the concrete and so forth, which we didn't have to do if we had gone into Plainfield. Well, we preferred Americana Estates, of course.
You made the right choice.
I know. And we've got a great view of the ponds. We sit right on the northern edge of the state, next to the pathway across the bridge. And my point was really, our values, our property values would go down if right across Kings Road, you ended up with houses that were not up to the standard of what we've got here.
I assure you that
And we are.
the municipality, the village itself, we are aware of that, and we're going to do everything to protect
Appreciate that.
your property.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time, Steve. Any other correspondence? Do you swear to tell the truth at this public hearing?
I do.
Please state your name.
My name is Keith Doss.
Hi, Keith.
I actually just moved to the area in Summerfield a year ago, a year and a week ago to be exact. I don't know if you would be able to pull up the one with that shows the truck route currently. But I do live in the cul-de-sac actually next to Mr. Pittman, and my property backs up to, is actually right behind. Thank you. I'm actually currently right here, right on that,
Okay.
corner there. And in this area, from what I'm able to see, I work from home currently, and every day I see, now obviously there's cement trucks and dump trucks and everything like that going through, but the number of semis that I've seen going west down this road past Dalton, connecting to 59, wherever they're going off 59, also coming back from 59, going this way to turn into whatever area that they're supposed to be going to, is just astronomical at this point. I mean, 5 to 7 in a 6-hour period is, one semi truck an hour. What I'm concerned with currently with that, not to mention the sound that we hear all the time, and just the overall traffic route that's going through with the semis and trucks that are coming through there. But the weight limit that's going through there, if that has been brought up to anyone, I know that there was at a time, there was a sign on Dalton and Summerfield here that did say there was a 6-ton weight limit. There was also, currently there's one sign from what I'm able to tell, coming down the street here, about halfway, somewhere around here, says, end of truck route 500 feet. And yet we get 6-ton, 15 semis continuing all the way down this route. So what I would like to know, and what we can find out, is that what other signage and means are going to be used in order to keep the trucks from going down this road and using this area, possibly damaging the roundabout with, depending on how, I'm sorry, I keep touching it, depending on how large, the trucks are. And then, what's to prevent further warehouse expansion into the planned residential area? We allow this, how much more is going to be allowed down the road? Another 15, another 15, another 15, until the rest of this is all residential. Now again, I'm only coming into this, from a year ago, and at the time when I was buying the property, I was told that this was all going to be residential. I didn't know that you guys had already had this planned out, in 2016. But again, the noise, the sound, the constant truck route that's coming through here is just unacceptable. I don't see how just a couple, if they're not using this route currently and they're still coming down here to come and make their turns or wherever they're going, or coming off 59, coming back the other way, what's to stop more and more traffic, more and more trucks, semis coming through this area, especially if it's only going to be a right turn up here. You know, our residents in this neighborhood, they're going to be coming off 59 and coming down this way. And as mentioned, if there are trucks that are supposed to be going through this area that would be fined and ticketed, I would propose that we start now and get money back into Bolingbrook, put some police presence out there, and start ticketing these drivers that are using this area. That's a non-truck route at Dalton and Rodeo there. And I guess I just would like to know what more signage and, you know, what other information is going to be put there to deter and stop the semis and trucks and such in that area. So, again.
I'm going to have our planner address that for you. Those are all valid questions, and I thank you very, very much for bringing that up.
At this time, I just want to back up my fellow residents and just say I don't agree with the current plan of adding more space to this area. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, Keith. Any further correspondence? Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's for me.
Do you swear to tell the truth at this public hearing, sir?
I do.
Your name, please?
My name is Russ Fletcher. For those who might not be familiar, I served as chairperson of this planning commission until August of 2016. So I'm quite familiar with the original discussions on the original annexation and zoning requests on this property. And also it's important for me to mention that I'm here this evening as a private citizen. However, I do happen to be a trustee of the Crossroads of Faith Church. So the opinions that I'm expressing tonight are my own personal opinions and not necessarily those of the church or the trustees. So first off, I want to say that in my opinion, the changes that are being made tonight are what I think should have been done originally. It makes more sense than what was done originally. But I do understand that the village was trying to accommodate requests of the residents at the time that it was originally being discussed. Since I have been the primary caretaker of the property at Crossroads for the last 21 years, quite familiar with a lot of the things that have been going on, and I do have to express my extreme dismay at the fact that the village has negated a verbal agreement that happened in 2016 to put in a curb cut eastbound on Rodeo to enter the Crossroads property. Mr. Eastman mentioned this evening that there was going to be additional signage that's going to be put up as the project is completed, and I would request that part of that signage be permitting U-turns at Dalton and at the entrance to Southgate, so that the members of our congregation and those coming to our property are safely able to negotiate those turns, since we don't have the curb cut anymore as was originally promised. Secondly, I do have to agree with the residents. This week I've been spending quite a bit of time at the church property. In addition to the construction traffic that one might expect when they're building the roadway, there are a considerable number of trucks that are semi-trucks that are going by both directions on Rodeo, and I would echo the residents that have mentioned that previously. But all in all, just want to request the sign since the curb cut was eliminated.
Thank you very much, Russ. Appreciate it. Any further correspondence? Seeing none, may I have a motion to close this public hearing?
Hold on. You
Second.
done that?
Oh, Matt.
You want me to add anything?
Matt, please,
Well, I think if we want Tom to address some of the truck traffic, I mean, Tom's here to speak on.
that's what you want to do it during the public hearing, right? Sure. Tom, you want to address some of the concerns of the residents here?
Yeah, I think it's largely going to be a matter of enforcement. I can double check, what the signage is, make sure if there's a missing weight limit signs or whatnot that would allow the, police department to do that enforcement. If they're missing, get those posted. I believe they're up, but I can double check that. And then once they're up, we can ask the police department to, do some extra enforcement, because, once you get west of Kings Road, that becomes a pretty lightweight road, and a lot of truck traffic will, literally destroy that road. So, we don't want trucks there any more than any of you do. So,
And then I think we need a little bit more signage. One of the residents had mentioned that there's only one sign, about 500 feet or so into it, correct? And maybe we can look into that. Obviously, as a municipality, as a village, we can't monitor or route traffic around town. It's been a growing community, and these truck drivers just find ways to get from point A to point B, faster, I guess. The other question, Matt, I do have from echoing from some of the residents here, their concerns, was the noise. Throughout the night, is this a 24-hour operation that we're operating in the industrial area?
So industrial areas are, technically, they do operate 24 hours. I don't know what the future businesses will be in this area. I do know that some businesses are louder than others, as he mentioned, depending upon the equipment that they're using and things like that. So I do understand those are valid points. I do understand that. But we do have restrictions too. If it gets to the point where it's too loud, code enforcement can get involved, and they have the ability to regulate sound and things like that. So please, if there's continuous problems, contact code enforcement. And we also have, a working relationship with Northern and their tenants and things like that. So we have to keep, things in order as well. So
I think most of the concerns came from the truck going by and haulers and so forth, more so than the noise factor. So I think we should definitely look into that and see if we can remedy the situation. Anything else you'd like to add?
I guess I would like to add a little bit in terms of what Russ brought up. The curb cut, I guess, that kind of went away, Russ, right after that. The amount of complaints that we got from the residents to keep a curb cut there far outweighed what the church wanted in terms of the left turn into their property. Everyone feared that if that curb cut stayed there, that it would only encourage more traffic to go past Dalton to try to enter the industrial property. So the closing of the median was a decision to appease a lot of the residents' concerns to eventually get truck traffic away from Rodeo Drive. There was a huge concern that if we allowed that curb cut there, that it would only allow them to think that's an extra way into the property. So I'm not saying that it wasn't promised, but it definitely was a discussion that was pretty right away after that meeting happened. That
Shut down.
It got shut down.
Yeah, all in all, I think you guys did an excellent job trying to make everybody happy. This is, I believe, probably the best situation that we could come up with the school parcel, straight lining it, that way.
This is the biggest piece of land that we'll have to deal with that isn't residential Bronx farm area.
For the
This is
residents,
biggest
there
piece
isn't
we'll
much
have.
around to develop on.
Right.
We're pretty much landlocked. So if you're, thinking that, oh, there's going to be another, first of all, there's no truck stops here. It's just an a limited industrial area. And I don't think there's any development left. We're pretty much landlocked, and I think you guys did a pretty decent job. Thank you for that. Anything else to add?
Did you guys want to add anything?
Sure.
Please come on up.
Yeah.
Good evening.
You swear to tell the truth at this public hearing, sir?
I do.
Your name?
Matthew Grosecki, Senior Vice President of Northern Builders.
Welcome, Matthew. Please proceed.
Thank you for having us here tonight. I wanted to address one thing as it pertains to noise. We're very mindful in this next phase of development that the two buildings that we saw rendering of earlier that face Rodeo, we were very deliberate in the placement of those buildings and the fact that any truck docks on those buildings would be on the rear, but also those buildings actually act as a screen for sound as well. So much of the noise that residents do hear come from the Ferrara building, which is a cross dock that comes all the way, close to Rodeo, without anything in front of it screening it. This plan, we're using the building as a screen for any buildings behind it to block that noise. So I think that it will be a dramatic improvement as far as any new development that takes place. So I just wanted to share with you and the residents that we're very mindful of that. That was one of our takeaways in 2016, and it's a concern that we all share with you.
Thank you. That's very important information.
Thank you.
Right, with that being said, I'd like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing, please.
So moved?
Second.
Commissioner Shank, second Commissioner Barrington Tucker. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Here.
Commissioner Shank,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes?
Commissioner Flores, yes.
I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the findings of fact.
So moved?
Second,
Commissioner Shank, second Commissioner Flores. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Nay.
Commissioner Shank,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores, yes.
The rezoning from R3, single-family residence, I-1 Limited Industrial, project number 431.15. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second,
Shank, second Flores. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Here.
Commissioner Shank,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes,
Commissioner Flores, yes.
we stand approved. Last but not least item on the agenda, we have a annexing and rezoning from ER to I-1 and R3 Plainfield School District, NEC of Remington Boulevard and Kings Road, project number 409.20. May I have a motion to open this public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Commissioner Wright, second Commissioner Shank. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker,
Here.
Commissioner Shank,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright,
Yes.
Chair Ali,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores, yes.
Mr. Eastman.
Thank you. The applicant again is here before you to request approval of rezoning from ER Estate Residence to I-1 Limited Industrial and R3 Single Family Residence to rezone an existing lot of record. The property that we are talking about is at the northeast corner of Remington Boulevard and Kings Road. The applicant is seeking approval of a rezoning for the property from ER to I-1 and R3, which is part of a petition to annex. Whenever the property is brought into the village of Bolingbrook, it receives the classification of ER Estate Residence, which does then necessitate a rezoning of a more appropriate zone. In this instance, the appropriate classification the village sees is that the east half, or I would say east quarter of the property would be I-1, with the remainder being R3, since the majority of the surrounding properties are so zoned. Per the attached exhibit, you have here before you approximately 31.796 acres would be rezoned R3 single family, which would be zoned and developed as residential property in conjunction with the property that we previously discussed, and approximately 8.2 acres to I-1 limited industrial, which would be zoned and developed as part of Carlo Corporate Center West. I won't go through everything again, but everything that I mentioned previously in terms of the berm, the maintenance of it, the landscaping, as well as all the different requirements and part of the annexation agreement would be mimicked in this agreement. And therefore, staff is here to recommend approval of a rezoning from ER, the state residential, to I1, limited industrial, and R3, single-family residence, based upon the zoning map that you have before you for the land located at the northeast corner of Remington Boulevard and Kings Road, subject to the approval of the annexation and annexation agreement. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Eastman. Any questions from the commissioners? Any correspondence from the audience? Seeing none, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Wright, second Commissioner Shank. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker?
Here.
Commissioner Shank?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Chair Ali?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores? Yes.
At this point, I'd like to call for a motion to accept the findings of fact for this project.
So moved.
Second?
Commissioner Shank, second Commissioner Flores. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker?
Yes.
Commissioner Shank?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Chair Ali?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores? Yes.
Last but not least, a motion to approve on PC 20.08, approval of the rezoning of ER to I1 and R3 and adoptions of findings of fact, project number 409.20. Motion.
So moved.
Commissioner Shank,
Second?
second Commissioner Flores. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tucker?
Yeah.
Commissioner Shank?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Chair Ali?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores? Yes.
There's no new business to be added. There's no old business to be finished. Announcements from commissioners. I'd like to, first and foremost, say farewell to our mayor. After over 3 decades of service, Mayor Claire is finally retiring. I'm not sure if he's watching with Pat on TV at home, but Roger, you've done a phenomenal job. You've turned a town, I've lived here a quarter of a century, and there was nothing past Schmidt Road. And to turn a town like Bolingbrook from where it was into the metroplex that it is today, I salute you, sir. And thank you for making this such a beautiful town for us to grow old in. You'll never be forgotten. And please be safe. COVID's out there still lurking around. That's all I have to say. Commissioners?
Nothing much. Good night
You
to
don't
all.
know what I gotta say, so. You really don't wanna know. Well,
Anybody else? Matt? Tom?
I'll just mention that the census is still available to fill out, so if you haven't completed your census, please, we have until the end of October to do that. The village is hovering right at about 75%, so if you know anyone that hasn't filled it out, it takes less than 5 minutes online. Please have them fill out the census. The more people that fill it out, the higher numbers for the village of Bolingbrook, the more money we can bring in through grants, through CDBG and HUD, and all the other things that are available, which are all based on the census numbers. So please fill it out if you haven't.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt, for that. And at this time, may I entertain a motion to adjourn?
So
Motion?
moved.
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you very much, and have a pleasant evening, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
Hey, Brett.
Turn the mic up.